where do we begin to learn what love is, how to love? I mean, that's part of what I think is the magic of Sharon's book, is that really it has a lot of how-to work in it. In many ways, it's a workbook, it's a handy book, because we don't know what to do. You know, I remember trying to tell my young lover at the time, who seemed not to comprehend love. I wrote on a little postcard thing, you know, love is a combination of 6 ingredients: care, commitment, knowledge, responsibility, respect, and trust. And so if you don't know what you're doing, just pull out that little card and ask yourself, in what way does my action that I'm taking reflect these traits, these characteristics, these values, if you will? And so that I think, again, the question of love is the question of what to do. And that's what makes your book, Sharon, so powerful.
Thank you. Could you repeat the 6?
Yeah.
Care, commitment, knowledge, responsibility, respect, and trust.
Could you do it slower?
Care, commitment, knowledge, responsibility, respect, and trust.
I was having one of those days when the world feels thick and memories I wish I could forget are front and center, hanging heavy in the air like cement on my chest. I was having one of those days when being alive feels like a chore, when just getting up and out the door is too much. So I prayed. I got down on my knees and my grandmother's grandmother began to speak to me. She said, listen, you are a meteor shower, meant for more than you could even begin to imagine. You are made of light, limitless like the wind, regal as the tallest oak that ever stood. She said, hear me good. You are a shooting star, not for the concrete and traffic, smog and city streets. You are meant for the sky, not the broken promises of this world, the sharp tongues and shameless actions, cold-blooded, compassionless coercion on every other corner. No, you are the moon. For only those who survive the darkest night live to tell the story of the stars who live and live and live to be reborn into their own greatness again and again, getting wiser with every year. Be grateful for time. Growing older is a luxury. Ask Anne Frank, ask Trayvon Martin. You're alive, girl, alive, alive for a purpose, on purpose. You are here. Through every low moment you've lived through, you are here, breathing. Nothing is strong enough to put out the light you got within. That galaxy living in your chest, baby girl, I'll say it again. You are a shooting star made of magic. Never forget, God spoke you into existence, dreamt you into a body, blessed the planet with your presence. You ain't nobody's to claim. You belong to the earth. Your breath, your heart, your spirit lives in the music moving somewhere behind the sun, singing songs of solidarity with the wind, weightless. For queens carry only themselves. No baggage, no heavy hearts. Freedom is yours alone, but you got to claim your throne. Walk steady in your skin. You are the answered prayers of your kin. The ancestors rejoice at your very existence. You are the open road we could never travel. The limitless midnight of our dreams. Divinely designed for a destiny you cannot even imagine. I want you to imagine. Somewhere off the coast of West Africa, 7 generations ago, they knew a girl child would be born many moons into the future who would be a gift unto the world. They knew you were coming. They knew you were coming. Don't you see? Don't you see? You are who we knew you'd be. We're pulling for you, but we need your help. You believe in God, but you don't believe in yourself. When all along you are God. That spirit spark is within you. Get up off your knees, get up off your knees, get up off your knees, girl, and be.
Beautiful, thank you. Wow. Good evening, everyone. My name is Shermena M. Nelson, and I serve as the Chief of Staff and Director of Community Engagement at the African American Policy Forum. Together with the Center for Intersectionality and Social Policy Studies, we welcome you to the 3rd event of our annual series, Her Dream Deferred, a week on the status of Black women. I would first like to thank Gina Lorraine, who is an exceptionally talented poet, singer, songwriter, activist, and creative writing professor. As a guest artist of the American Embassy under the Obama administration, Gina has performed in over 10 countries and has been commissioned to write poems honoring Quincy Jones and Prince. Gina has been a longtime supporter of AAPF and serves as our artist in resident, poet laureate. Gina is always willing to add her artistry and advocacy to our fight for justice for Black women. Gina, thank you for such a powerful reading. For the past 7 years, in honor of Women's History Month and the UN's International Decade for People of African Descent, AAPF has convened Her Dream Deferred during the last week of March in order to amplify the voices and stories of Black women and girls. This series serves to disrupt dominant and stereotypical narratives around Black women and our well-being. We aim not only to speak to the harms that Black women and girls face, but also to sharpen the tools necessary to dismantle those structural barriers that plague Black women in our homes, in our schools, in our communities, and in our places of work. So far this week, we have been moved by the screenings of On These Grounds, which provided a snapshot into the crisis of Black girls in schools who are over-policed and underprotected. And yesterday, we watched the deeply moving Aftershock, which opened a window into the tortured history and contemporary disregard that leaves Black women endangered by the act of giving birth. In these talkbacks we had with cast members and producers and directors of these films, we had to contend with the difficult, triggering, and traumatic information about the many interlocking forces that create the precarity that marks life as a Black woman in this country. Still, despite the many countervailing forces that are thrown at us, Black women continue to resist, fighting against the systems that not only threaten us, but threaten our communities. Last year, after a week of informative panel discussions and a mini film festival, we decided to extend the week to host an event to promote and encourage Black women's self-care. That space for ritual healing proved not only to be welcomed, but critically necessary. So we're back at it this year, right in the middle of our week, Wellness Wednesday, if you may, to dissect, to explore, to restore. Our dearly departed bell hooks once wrote that the intellectual tradition of the West is very individualistic. It is not community-based. The intellectual is often thought of as a person who is alone and cut off from the world. So I have had to practice being willing to leave the space of my study, to be in community, to work in community, and to be changed by community. Just as she did, we must choose to forsake this tradition of isolation and build a community meant for healing and encouragement. Therefore, it is my honor, and we bring you a labor of love, cultivating spaces of restorative healing for activists, caregivers, and healers. Our guide through tonight's experience is our incomparable MC, Miss Awoye Timpo. Awoye, I turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Shermena, and welcome, welcome, welcome to everybody. It's so wonderful and incredible to see all your beautiful faces today. So when Audre Lorde first wrote about self-care, she poignantly noted, for Black women, learning to consciously extend ourselves to each other and to call upon each other's strengths is a life-saving strategy. In the best of circumstances surrounding our lives, it requires an enormous amount of mutual, consistent support for us to be emotionally able to look straight into the face of the powers aligned against us and still do our work with joy. It takes determination and practice. Another secret, she continued, is to find some particular thing your soul craves for nourishment. A different religion, a quiet spot, a dance class, and satisfy it. That satisfaction does not have to be costly or difficult, only a need that is recognized, articulated, and answered, end quote. Recognized, articulated, and answered. There is something that has called all of us together tonight, and we are so grateful to be sharing this space with you all. Tonight, we're creating a communal space to recognize what your soul craves as nourishment, to articulate that need in ourselves, and hopefully through the course of this evening, to find tools to answer the call of your souls. Tonight, we reclaim our ritual healing and self-care and counseling as our own. Tonight, we honor the power of mental, physical, and spiritual healing as a force in individual and collective restoration. And while we hope this will be an evening of healing, we also want to be clear that this is not a substitute for seeking professional medical advice. We encourage you to never disregard professional medical advice or delay seeking medical treatment because of something you have heard or read on tonight's call. Tonight, though intended to be therapeutic, is not therapy. In that spirit, we encourage you to listen to your body during this event. Pay close attention to how you're feeling, what comes up for you. Write down your thoughts if you'd like. Take breaks if you need. This is your space. This is for you. You're a member of this community and therefore welcome to engage in the way that feels most comfortable for you while maintaining the sacredness of the space and honoring the community that's gathered. So tonight will consist of 3 moderated conversations, meditation breakout sessions, and then a final roundtable session during which we'll uplift questions from the community. So if you have any questions during the moderated conversations, we welcome you to raise them in the chat and we'll do our best to elevate them. We are joined this evening by a truly exceptional and inspiring group of women. Shawna Murray-Browne is an award-winning community healer, national speaker, and liberation-focused mind-body medicine practitioner. She is the founder and executive director of Kindred Community Healing and the principal consultant at the Kindred Wellness LLC. Shawna was named one of the 10 Black female therapists you should know by the Huffington Post, was featured on the PBS special Mysteries of Mental Illness, and was a 2-time guest on the Therapy for Black Girls podcast. Shawna will be joining us for our first conversation, where we'll be discussing the history of Black women's labor and ritual healing practices. Dr. Leslie Woke is a physician, emotional recovery coach, and founder at Heartwork EQ, which is a personal development company specializing in faith-based emotional intelligence training for high-performing women. She has a robust background in medicine, learning and development, as well as public health. Dr. Leslie will be discussing the effect of Black women's labor on their bodies, as well as access to adequate mental health care. Anana Harris is the founder and CEO of the Self-Care Agency, LLC, where she operates as the lead strategic business and self-care consultant program designer, as well as the founder of Sister Care Alliance. Ms. Paris launched her 2021-22 year as a Women of Color Initiative strategic self-care curriculum design consultant. Most recently, this year, Ms. Paris facilitated a strategic self-care training for over 200 lawyers, judges, and legal professionals with the training division of the Administrative Office of the United States Courts. Anana will be discussing strategic self-care as community practice to encourage love of self. Chloe Dulce Louvouezo is a Congolese-American writer, mother, and advocate for women whose work is driven by discourse on identity and healing. She is the author of Life, I Swear, intimate stories from Black women on identity, healing, and self-trust, through which she explores nuances around identity, mental wellness, and healing, told through the lens of women from the Black diaspora. She currently serves as Senior Communications Officer at the Bill Gates and Melinda Gates Foundation on its Public Engagement and Insights team. And she is also a founding member of Huru, which creates sacred spaces for rest experiences that foster emotional well-being and wholeness. Chloe will be leading one of our breakout room conversations. Isis Ray Goldborn is the founder of Little Black Boutique, a marketplace of curated Black items that help raise the vibration of the collective. Through LBB, she houses all Black products that deliver security and power in order to facilitate transformation within the lives of others. Isis Ray considers it her sole purpose to create vehicles of empowerment for all. She is a champion of going within and embracing our own uniqueness. Isis will be hosting a breakout room dedicated to writing and journaling. And Imani Joyce Samuels, last but not least, is a spiritual thought leader. As a champion of the practice of rest, Imani founded Huru, a sacred space in the heart of Washington, D.C. and outside of Los Angeles, California, who infuses clinical, cultural, and spiritual touches to facilitate deep introspection and optimal shut-eye in an all-inclusive weekend. Her efforts have helped individuals and organizations across North America, Nigeria, South Africa, Senegal, Taiwan, the UAE, and the UK. Imani will be leading our stillness breakout room. So as you can see, we have a truly exceptional group of women gathered here tonight for this conversation and to lead these spaces. So I would like to now invite Imani to lead us through a guided meditation before we get into further conversations. Welcome, Imani.
Thank you, Awoye. Thank you, Shermena, and thank you, Kimberly, and the AAPF family for creating this space. I am inspired by Bell Hooks and her philosophy of love, and would be so honored to guide you this evening in a moment of meditation. So feel free to turn your cameras off and get comfortable. You can lower your gaze, plant your feet in the ground with your spine erect and just relax. And as you center yourself into this beautiful room, I invite you to take a few shallow breaths. In and out. In and out. In and out. And as you are breathing and being aware of your breath, I invite you to think of a moment when you felt fully loved. A moment full of joy, of peace, of restoration. Think of a moment where love is returning to you and promising you everlasting life. And as you recall upon this moment of love, just notice where you are. Notice who you're with. Notice the smells of the air and the taste in your mouth. Notice your heartbeat, the vibrations of your breath, and just notice how you are feeling inside. And as you are there in that moment with love, savor it. Savor the joy. Savor the peace. And savor the restoration. And take a deep breath in and let it out. And another breath in and release. And one final breath. And let it go. And notice the state of your mind after this peak love meditation adapted from bell hooks. And when you are ready, you may return to the present. And I invite you to just hang on to that joy and that love throughout Her Dream Deferred.
Thank you so much, Imani. Now, I am thrilled to introduce our moderator for this evening, Dr. Venus Evans-Winter. She is the Black Girls Research Initiatives Coordinator at the African American Policy Forum. Her areas of research are educational policy analysis, Black girls and women's onto-epistemologies, and critical race feminist methodologies. She's the author of several books, including Intersectional Qualitative Research and Introduction, Black Feminism and Qualitative Inquiry, a mosaic for writing our daughter's body, and Teaching Girls, Resilience in Urban Schools. Dr. Evans-Winters is also a clinical psychotherapist in private practice and founder of Planet Venus Institute. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Venus Evans-Winters.
Thank you, Awoye. It is an honor to be in community with you all this evening. I am looking forward to being in dialogue with these amazing healers, caregivers, and activists. The goal of this communal conversation is to engage in contemplative dialogue and to gain some practical tools that we can integrate into our own daily lives. My first conversation this evening is with my friend and colleague, Shawna Murray-Browne. We will be discussing the history of Black women's labor, love of others and self, and the history of healing practices. Welcome, Shawna.
Hey.
Hey, girl, hey. So, Shawna, my first question to you, how do you describe Black women's labor? In particular, what is the relationship between laboring and Black women's healing practices, approaches to caregiving, and other forms of activism?
Yeah, when I think about labor, like the first thing that comes up to me is actually a feeling of weight, of complexity, right? Like, and while I recognize though, that's the first thing that comes up for me, but when I really ground in what Black women's labor is, or the history of Black women's labor, I am thinking of my direct lineage history here in the United States of America. But when I really get into the actual history, the history that is pre-colonial, the history of labor before we started labeling it as something negative, something that hurts, I start to think of the labor in terms of this concept of space and time, this perspective of labor associated with the rhythm of the earth, with when the sun rises and falls, with what our body feels like and what the land is telling us and what is in right relationship with our ancestral lineage. And so when I'm thinking about the relationship between labor and its relationship to all that we are now, I really think that we have to ground it in not only the present day experiences that we're having right now, but what are the ways that our people have always healed, and what were the ways before we had to heal from the kind of oppression that we are constantly enduring in this present moment.
Thank you, Shawna. So Shawna, I know that you are like a cultural historian of sorts, or if you're not, I'm giving you that label, okay?
I mean, I don't even know how you knew, but I don't even know how you knew.
And so AAPF's executive director, Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw, is a part of the master class titled Black History, Freedom, and Love. And in that master class, Dr. Cornell West was also showcased, and his discussion emphasized the importance of centering love in Black politics and movement work. And Bell Hooks stated once, "To love well is the task in all meaningful relationships, not just romantic bonds." What does it mean to be engaged in a labor of love? And what is laboring for Black women?
Now, I think that laboring for Black women is something that we have in the present time the opportunity to reclaim. And so when we're laboring in love, I think that really brings to me this forward-thinking experience and acknowledgement of the fact that the way that Black women do our work in family, in community, and even in our day-to-day outside of the home, and our activism and our works, it is rooted in this space of love of self and a reflection of others. Now, I have to say, though, the reason why I put forth this perspective of complexity is because sometimes, we are so focused on doing and laboring in a way that has been contextualized for us as it relates to all the things that's been happening since capitalism. We associate our love and labor from the perspective of how can I do more? Because if I don't do it, who else will, right? And that is an ongoing reflection that many Black women activists and caregivers sort of take on. And because we are still reclaiming and reconnecting to our original ways of laboring in love, that is something that we have to first begin to pour back into ourselves. And so when I think about that historical frame of all of the pain that we endured, but paired with the joy and the presence that we gain when we're doing our works, because we know that this is how we birth, right? Laboring, oftentimes we might be thinking of labor like giving birth. And so this is when we reclaim and we reconnect to that African-centered or Afrocentric or Black power-focused perspective of labor, then that's where the birth happens. It happens in the darkness of the soil. That's when all the goodness sprouts up.
And so you're connecting this idea of labor with laboring as in giving birth, but also you're taking us back in the spirit of Sankofa, tying us back to the original lands and people, and rethinking this capitalistic notion of labor tied to our productivity or what products we can produce, as opposed to the energy that we're bringing, right? And so as activists, caregivers, and healers, and I think we could use that word because all of us here agreed last year that we might qualify as healers. We're comfortable with that word.
Yeah.
And also we are caregivers. We're giving care, right? In the spirit of bell hooks, right? In the spirit of our mothers, our ancestors, our elders. So what is the relationship, Shawna, between contemporary conversations on self-practice and indigenous ways of healing?
So when I was sitting with this, I was like, okay, so I always go back to it. Anyone that's here that knows me knows I always posit that question, right? Like, how have we always healed, right? How have we always healed? And so when we ground and like, okay, what's happening contemporarily, some of us, on a contemporary perspective, it's associated with looking good, meditating, capturing that photo, having the coinage, to pay for the finest or the flyest, the most, manicured experience of self-care. But our original ways, our indigenous healing ways, it happened in private. And that doesn't mean alone. It happens collectively. Oftentimes our contemporary perspective of self-care does, in alignment with what Bell Hooks articulated and Audre Lorde, it has been grounded and continues to ground in this motivation for isolation, for individualism. But our original ways were supported by the community, were supported by the environment we were in. And that allowed us to not only pour into ourselves, to do it in alignment with the earth, right? And that includes things like allowed us to be able to reflect on what is the spiritual cause of this ailment. Oh, I got this pain in my neck, this pressure on my chest. What's the spiritual cause of this malady? Or how, let me go commune with my grandma and them. And that is private. It's private, but often collective. It is communal and it transcends space and time. And so I say that the major difference between contemporary and what I believe we are reclaiming, right? We are reclaiming as it relates to our original ways or our indigenous ways of healing and communing is it's not a spectacle. It is something deep and powerful and in alignment with the earth.
If I may, in my mother's tongue, Shawna, you be dropping gems. That was very insightful and affirming. So I say, next we're going to Dr. Leslie Woke to speak a bit about the effects of Black women's labor on the body, or weathering, and access to mental health care. Dr. Woke, we've already spoken a bit about Black women's labor, why we labor, and how we labor. But now I want to get into the effects of that labor that Shawna was describing. Weathering, which was coined by Arlene Geronimus, is a process by which our bodies age faster than our white female counterparts' bodies. And a lot of this weathering or aging is due to chronic stress linked to social determinants of both mental and physical health. Now, this is a very real danger that we face, even as we continue to fight against this intersectional, right? These very real dangers of intersectional interests in our communities or politics. Can you talk to us, Dr. Woke, a little bit about holding toxic stress within the body? What might be the consequences to the immune systems of Black women, including our overall mental and physical health?
Yeah, no, I love this. I think a great way to frame this particular question might be around the recent confirmation hearings that we all watched with Ketanji Brown. And I think what so many of us, we could relate with her facial expressions, how she would hear the question, respond to the question, and you can literally watch her do these mental gymnastics, still come out with a bomb answer, and be able to stay poised, not show too much emotion, but still come off as warm. And by the end of it all, not only was I proud of her, this beautiful Black woman, but I was exhausted. Like, I was exhausted watching her have to process in real time, find the answer, stay poised, but still seem likable. And what she did on that stage, or like before all the cameras that day, is something that I think many of us have to deal with day in and day out, whether it be on Zoom calls for work, in the office, with friends of other races. There is this mental and emotional dynamics that we put ourselves through. And so typically when you're under a level of stress like that, and you have to hold it in, you cannot release it, you just have to deal, it puts a strain on the brain, particularly in the front of the brain. We call it the prefrontal cortex. And this is the part of the brain where we do all of our decision making. What do I want to wear for work today? What do I want to cook today? What do I want to watch on TV today? It stresses that particular area of having to now think through all the layers of interaction, of being first self-aware, and then aware of others, and then aware of the threat, and then now having to be able to reconcile the threat between now like societal norms and then expectations for ourselves. That's a lot of work. And so when you have the body that is tense in that way, it activates. Like, the body's not going to leave you hanging, it comes ready. And so it activates our sympathetic nervous system, and that push of adrenaline and cortisol, it is preparing us to fight, to run. But the thing is, we're not fighting. We're having to answer questions. We're having to engage and seem polite. We're having to look normal and sane and not like we are stressed out. And when you think about the way that that now takes on the face, let me not look like I'm angry. Let me hold my face this way. I don't know about y'all, but I think all of us at some point, we have maybe chosen a way that we keep our face in certain situations. You may kind of practice it sometimes, but you hold your face in that way because you're like, at least I know if they see this face, this is safe, you know? but over time, it all builds up. It all builds up. And I'll say this lastly, there was one part during the confirmation hearings when I think it was Cory Booker, when he went in and he's just giving her all the love. And it was such a sweet and tender moment, but I couldn't help but low key being pissed with him. Like, why did you leave her to have to like break composure? And so now you see her, she wants to cry, she wants to go in, she wants to be a normal human being, but yet knowing that, like, would it look partisan? Would it look like she's favoring him too much? And so again, this is a challenge that so many of us, and I can see you all also saying that you also notice that as well. But yeah, I tend to dub this as like a labor of containment, like the labor of having to contain ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah, so the example you gave with Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, I would describe these as microaggressions, micro assaults, or full out attacks on our humanity. Everything from what we seen earlier with this week with Jada Pinkett Smith, the actress, sitting while her appearance was critiqued in front of the world, to unfounded interrogations of of course, again, Ketanji Brown's qualifications. And also I think about our youngest sister, 22-year-old Sha'Carri Richardson, and being unfairly punished and judged and being forced to discuss her attempts to cope with anxiety in a public arena. I mean, these lists seemingly just keep growing. And so because we have a diverse age group in our audience. I saw a lot in the chat where people were coming from and things like that. Can you discuss for us more healthier ways to process those negative hormones that's floating through our bodies, especially considering that Black girls and women are living at the intersections of race and gender? So our options might be limited, especially for girls who are sitting in the classroom, for girls who are being confronted by the police, or for grown women who are at work with the face.
Yes.
Y'all see my face, the face.
Yes. Yeah, no, so good. I think for whenever you find yourself in a place of restriction, the answer is always to find your own pocket of freedom. And I don't say this to be cliche, but it's literal. So if you are in a space where I'm like, you may not be able to smile as much, or show that you're annoyed, or show that you're whatever, finding that small pocket of freedom looks like, you do that. If you have to step outside with your phone, while out for a second and come back, you do that, because that's you walking in your identity, which speaks to your authority and which speaks to the tool that you and every single last one of us has to create and rename a situation. And so I remember, like, there would be times, especially with, the loss of so many Black men and women over the past years, and like through the pandemic and all the things, and having to now discuss this in other groups, and then having those moments where I want to go in, or I want to weep right now. And them not being able to see that or get that, I had to reclaim my space, my freedom. And that might look like, I'm actually done with the conversation right now. It might look like freedom. Yeah, it's being able to grab that, hold on to that, and rename that. That might look like stepping out to your car and just talking to a girlfriend. It might look like in the moment you have a piece of paper and you are crazily doodling. We label those things as odd or weird, but if that's what you have to do to release that energy, then we do that, in the same way, like I think, many of us, we may come home, what's the first thing that comes off? We take off our bra, we slip up our shoes, we slip up our hair, all the things. We also need an emotional letdown moment as well. You slip off whatever face, mask, behaviors that we put on in order to survive. I think lastly, I think one of the things that kind of grounds me when I think about what it looks like to have another option is I think about what is lost. Whenever you labor, right? Like we all labor to gain something, but if we're gaining something, we're losing something. And so for me, I think about, well, man, if I've had to act like this before, these people, you know, clearly they have lost the full essence of who I am. I have lost a piece of my peace of mind, my sanity. You may then have headaches. You now have lost your sense of well-being from that. I think also too, one of the things that's lost is a part of our language. If you feel like in a normal everyday moment that you can't just say, I am angry or I am hurt, the ability to not do that, we lose our words, and our words are our power because that's how we create. And so oftentimes when I am contained, when I am in a space where, you know, like even now I'm in a life transition where it feels crazy to explain. It feels surreal. And in those moments, I feel very contained and limited and stripped of my God-given power to defend myself, speak for myself, and all the things. But what I do is that I go to my room or my car, I close that door, and it's in that moment that I say, no, 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 no. I know who I am. I know what authority that carries by virtue of my name. My middle name means work of God, heart of God. I am the work of God. I am the heart of God. And in that, if there's no one else listening, I will defend myself to myself. I will speak for myself to myself. Because if I can do that, I build me up. Let them have whatever version of me or us that they want. Let them have that, but to ourselves, oh, we can preach to ourselves. We can do that. So, whew, Selah. I think that's where we can start, is remembering that we can reclaim freedom for ourselves, preach to ourselves, because if words are power, those words are doing an even majestic work for us. And how much more do we not need that power? We give it to everyone else. Why not to ourselves? So let me slow down before I start going in. So.
Oh, gratitude, Dr. Leslie. Gratitude for that piece of very practical advice. We need it now as we take care of each other and hold space with each other. I'm going to move on now to Anana to discuss strategic self-care as a community practice, one that encourages self-love. Anana, welcome. My other ball of energy sister. Just a giggle for me. Anana, we touched a bit on the bits of labor that Black women perform, even as Dr. Leslie states, sitting with it and the right to take up space across contexts and relationships. What does the cultivation of spaciousness and self-care rituals look like in the workplace?
Well, you know, I'm going to build because, first of all, the energy that Dr. Leslie dropped on this screen that just reached through the screen and snatched all of our lives and hugged us and made us feel normal and made us feel seen. I want to build on that because in the workplace, as she so eloquently described, we do need that moment to escape and experience freedom. What I want to build on is, what do you do once you attend an event like this? Once you are exposed to sisters of this level of experience and patience and love for who we are and historical knowledge, right? When you have these aha moments, like, that's me, where do you go from there? Because in the workplace, there is something called a business plan, right? Where they have planned for that business and that environment to not produce healthy workers, to not produce healthy mindsets, to not fulfill your purpose, right? That business plan that they drafted before they started the business, that they meet about quarterly, that they, look at my mouth, strategically sit down and take data on and get feedback. I know y'all are feeling me, okay? I'm not gonna go too far, but the environment of a workplace is pre-established before you came on board to be a strategic environment. Pre-established. So for you to step into that space in that workplace environment and randomly take care of yourself, it does not work. It doesn't work. For you to randomly say, I'm here at this wonderful event. This is, you know, a beautiful random thing that it's not happening every single week, right? It's not here all the time. I don't have this access all the time. And now I'm going to take some of these aha moments and leave here. When I walk into the workplace, I will randomly take the advice of Dr. Leslie. I will randomly absorb all of this good Shawna knowledge, right? I want to layer on top of all this goodness that we're getting. Where do you go when you extend beyond your aha moment and the outpouring of love that you're experiencing now? That is the justification for being strategic. One, because the workplace environment was strategic before you got there. Okay, it was strategic before you got there. It's going to continue to be strategic. The other beautiful reason for being strategic is you already have the skills and talents because you've been strategically addressing the needs of others, strategically figuring out how to pour love on others, right? Now, part of the issue, which I'm sure everyone else will kind of undergird and expand, right, is we forget. Trauma makes our minds forget what works for us, right? Stressful environments, inappropriate, disrespectful, not in therapy supervisors will come and lay stuff on our heads, right? Coworkers not in therapy, turning your office into their therapy sessions, right? All of those things add pressures and potential triggers that end up drenching our brains with everything else but what Dr. Leslie mentioned. What do I need? What speaks to me? What does my name mean? Why was my name given to me? What were the names of my ancestors, right? So to be strategic means, in terms of self-care definition that we do with the strategic self-care program is the act of addressing a regular or normal need. But to be strategic about it is to do it on a regular basis in more than one category of care in your life. And for us, it's spiritual, emotional, economic, which is your time, money, and energy, artistic, physical, educational, and social. Now, we're not going to do a terminology war. You can translate it how you want it, but I promise you, the C-suite members, the CEOs, the founders who are establishing these workplaces, they sit down with advisors. Do you know why they sit down with advisors and coaches and people that know how to strategize? Because alone, their own mindsets get drenched with things that they forget, right? So now the people shaping your environment are getting advised. The people shaping your environment, right, and making decisions that impact you are strategic. And you are whirling around, popping into events without a sheet of paper, which is what I'm going to suggest that you all do, is you get a sheet of paper, you get your notes section out from your phone right now. And I want you to ask yourself the question, what do I critically need? Now, you can pick a category of care based off of what everybody is saying, but what you write down, whether it's spiritual and emotionally that you get out of this, economically with your time, money, and energy, artistically, educationally, physically, and socially, whatever, what do I need, blank. And then I want you to create baby steps and say, what do I need in the workplace for this to actually work? Okay, so I just want to drop that in there because I always say I have like a PhD in suppression. Okay. Okay, I have a PhD in suppression. I know how to suppress like the best of them. And to Dr. Leslie's point again, over time, suppressing over and over and over again, watching another Black woman suppress over and over and over again. The toll that it takes is we begin to forget. We forget how to even dig into ourselves. That's what we need. So last I'll say is if you're in the workplace, who you are and how easy it is for you to access the answer to the question, what do I need in the workplace, is just as difficult at home, okay? It is just as difficult at home because you have not been practicing it. Now you have more threats in the workplace, but you are the same person with the same skill sets. So don't think about it just in the workplace. Make sure that you're practicing these things in and out. Now, for Sister Care Alliance, I mean, we have a framework around it, and we created spaces because I know, Venus, you were speaking about community, right? And love and community. You want to take that powerful question, what do I need? And finish the sentence, expand it a bit more. What do I need when I come to AAPF's event? What do I need right now while I'm listening to all of these speakers and presenters? What do I need to do to be able to absorb and strategically utilize what I'm hearing? That is how we begin to expand beyond the aha moment. Or yeah, oh yeah, child. Like we need the strategic part to really layer on top of that. So Sister Care Alliance, we do something called Sis, You Okay? We started it after the sister who was Miss America when she committed suicide. And so we launched this online community to do a check-in with a framework. But what each participant, which I feel like it was 30% Black women attorneys, because she was also an attorney, right? What you have to understand is you ask yourself to participate in community events. One, what do I need to be able to express and exchange something as potent as love? What do I need in this? Is it safety, which is typically at the top of the list, right? So we're typically critiqued about how engaged we are, about how well we take care of ourselves, and people skip over the fact that we don't feel safe the majority of the time. You have to feel safe to be able to start engaging with your needs. So I'm gonna wrap it up. Sis, Are You Okay? Is curated by me, and it's structured and communicated in a way that really protects what the conversation needs to be. We do these check-ins, but I am mindful of asking the question at the top of the event, which I would offer to all of you who are doing these types of and creating these safe spaces and these strategic self-care support groups, similar to the way we do it, is I asked at the top of it, what do you need? Which category of care is most prevalent for you? Because we have to stop operating outside of the knowledge of what we need as individuals, but then outside of what we need as a community. And then lastly, from a community perspective, your voice and your perspective matters. Because we're drowned out often, we forget that we need to speak up, again, to Dr. Leslie's point, right? Letting those words and that language come out. So I'm gonna say this, be able to share in this chat, what does the community and the communities you want to engage in, what do they need in order for them to better perpetuate a loving environment? Because guess who knows? You do. You know exactly what a community environment needs to have for people to feel safe to exchange a loving word, for people to kind of curate a path from feeling ostracized to feeling heard. You know exactly what that answer is. So be proactive about yourself and strategic about yourself, and then be proactive about communicating and asking those in the community, what do you need? Over and over again. That's what I would offer without turning this into like a 3-hour training. I'm sorry.
Oh no, that's what we're here for. That's what we're here for. As you know, Anana, we do the hard work here at AAPF. And all of us here today in this discussion, we are choosing to talk about the laboring that we do inside and outside of the workplace. And I will add, for the young people that's here joining us today, also the school place. And Anana, your words reminded me that they are at an advantage because they still get to hear this young, whereas we learned it along the way through a few bumps and bruises. And so I'm going to try to pitch out some questions that we are getting from the chat. And I want to start with you, Dr. Nwoke. Doc, how can we protect our mental and physical health while laboring and cultivating a praxis of love for ourselves and others?
I think first, thank you for the question. I think first it's sitting in a space of, as I was listening earlier, I wrote something down. I said, you value what you have accepted as real. And so I think whenever we think about trying to protect our hearts, our minds, heal in very practical ways, we must first have accepted that I'm worth it. We must first have accepted that there is something to heal. We must first have accepted that I have tools and things at my hand and leisure to be able to, like, we must first have accepted that. Without that acceptance, none of this really matters. It will continue to sit in that place of, I forget who was saying it earlier, but as just an aha moment. I think Amana said that. It will just be an aha moment. It will just be, this was great. This was a great evening. And then you roll into bed, you scroll on IG, and then tomorrow starts. And I have to say, what a shame. I think many of us as healers, we get questions like this, worded in however ways. But I think one of the first thing, the primary thing, even before any list of tips and all the things is, do you see you and have you accepted that who you are, where you are, is worth holding, defending, mending? And if you have made that decision, okay, then we can start. When you've made that decision, the tips will start to come. You won't even have to pose your questions here. The tips will come because you say, I'm worth it as a mom or as an entrepreneur. And so because of that, what does me as a mom or entrepreneur need? I need some time away from my kids. So I'm going to give myself that. I'm going to send myself on a night away. The tips come, if that makes sense, right? So I'll just kind of end with this. I think when we do this journey, one of the biggest things we have at our leisure or at, as our tool is our thinking, our mind. When you have accepted that what you have here is valuable and real and substantive, oh, like I said earlier, your body will work for you. Your mind will work for you. It will give you the answers that you've been looking for.
Yeah, when you know who you are and you accept who you are. Yes, thank you. Isis, one of the heaviest burdens or loads that Black women carry in our labor is the need to be okay or always successful. Talk to us a bit about the importance of giving yourself permission to be, regardless of what stage in the process one is in.
because it's always a process, right? It's always a process. I was writing some notes when thinking about this question, and I really think it's less about always having to be okay and successful, and more about always having to be okay and successful according to somebody else's idea of okay and successful. And I want to be okay and successful, but not according to John, Sally, Pete, my kids, my husband, my father. Everybody has a version of who you're supposed to be. And, you know, I literally wrote this down. We have the answers. So it's so beautiful that I'm following Dr. Leslie's, you know, thoughts on this, where we have the answers, right? And that's where it's like, okay, everybody, if you ask anybody, we want to be okay, we want to be successful, but what does that really mean to you? And when we start to give ourselves permission to go on that hunt, and that it is okay for us to not be okay with the status quo that everybody else set up, even though as a little kid you were told that this is what it is to be a mom and a wife, and you wanted that wedding and you wanted to wear that dress, and now you're like, I didn't even think I ever even wanted to get married. Like, what is this life that I'm living that's not even mine? And when we don't take some time to identify those answers that we have them. If we have nothing as women, we have intuition, especially as Black women. We got some intuition like nobody's business. We have the answers. So giving ourselves permission to quiet the noise and listen to those answers because they're there. Giving ourselves permission to shed all of the things that we thought would make us happy, and giving ourselves permission to actually go seek that happiness. And giving ourselves permission to be okay with the fact that it might make a lot of people mad when you find that happiness. And that's okay too, because that's none of your business, right? So all of these little bits and pieces, I think just having that internal conversation with yourself and being like, look, girl, this is what we're doing now. We're going to go on a bit of a journey. I'm giving myself the permission to do that. And where I land, I'm giving myself permission to be okay there too.
Very good.
And one of the prompts, I know I can go on. One of the prompts in the room was, you know, what is something you're thinking about doing but afraid to tell other people that you're thinking about this thing? Like, we are so afraid of taking that step. So the next part of that is, what is something that you would give yourself permission to do? So, yeah.
Giving yourself permission. Very good, Isis. One piece of advice I heard, and I believe it was Maya Angelou who said, it's none of your business what other people think of you. And so, Sister Imani, what are some of your recommendations for creating space in this new world of technology and disconnectedness from others and self?
Oh my goodness, is that even possible? 1000% it is possible. You can always come to Huru, of course, a sacred space designed for women of color. And it actually is inspired by Indigenous practices. So this ratio, 3-to-1 or 4-to-1, like, we have to surround ourselves by the people who are going to nourish us. Yes. We were talking in the stillness room for just a little bit while we weren't in stillness about how to neutralize negative experiences. And oftentimes it takes 12 positive experiences just to neutralize, not overcome, but just to neutralize. So immerse yourself in nature. That is creation. That is life. Water is life. That's the one thing that I can say. When Black women are healed and whole, the earth will restore. Climate change will revert. There's so much power in just sitting in sitting by the tree and sitting by the water. And that's the best way that it's inevitable that the metaverse will exist and virtual reality will exist. That's inevitable, but you have to intentionally, Anana said it, strategically infuse these moments of stillness within your life, within your regimen. You will not hear from your spirit guides, from your source, from the ancestors until you do. So you can do what you want, but they will always bump you back into creation. And there's one parable, I don't even know where I learned it, so forgive me for not knowing the source. But when you go and you sit by the tree and you surrender your fears and your worries to the tree, it is almost like us holding a baby. We know that baby's okay. We know if they're crying, they will be nourished when we feed them, when we bathe them, when we hold them, when we love them. The tree will do that for us. The sun will do that for us. What does the sun need to fulfill itself? Absolutely nothing. It rises and it falls with nobody else's help but the creator. So if we model ourselves after beautiful creation, we will be healed and whole.
Yes, yes, connectedness as grounding. Connectedness as grounding. Chloe, force field of love. Chloe, in reflecting on the many challenges faced by Black women and girls and our need to protect each other, the term force field of love came up. Can you talk to us today and talk us through what that might look like to you?
Yeah, you know, so often Black women aren't afforded the softness, and that sort of robs us of our permission to be intimate with one another. And I think when, you know, it robs us of our ability to connect, and that's what they want. But there's this intuitive understanding that that Black women share. It's this, I see you, I hear you, you are understood. And I truly believe that to feel understood is to feel loved. You know, we share an emotional alchemy, this like journeying together, this experience that when we allow softness into our relationships among each other can be that force field of love. I think there is so much power in our vulnerability. And we were talking about this in the breakout room, and our ability to share ourselves while we are in the middle of our story. Share ourselves while we are in the middle of navigating and understanding the fragility of life and reconciling that with our faith. And when we're able to be vulnerable in telling the story of where we sit in the middle of things and allow other Black women to see us, there's just so much power that we can share in that innate wisdom that we see in each other as mirrors to each other. And so for me, when I hear force fields and as it relates to protecting each other, for me that starts with the intimacy we allow between each other.
Yes, thank you, Chloe. I know that was a tough question, and I think we should continue to contemplate it, especially what it might look like in our writing and our text and our communications with each other. And so, thank you, Shawna. You know, here at AAPF, we believe in intergenerational laboring. how should we be preparing the next generation of practitioners, especially in the fields of social work or mental health counseling? And I'm thinking like culturally responsive practices.
Yeah. So, you know, we got to get right, y'all. And one of the underlying, well, there are many, so I'm going to list a few. In my work in holding space for therapists to explore what it means to offer a therapy that liberates, I teach that it is super important for us to do a few things. Therapists, we need to center the cultivation of local community care, as opposed to always positing that the best referral or way to get our needs met, and that might come up in the therapeutic space, is, you know, some other large white institution. But the only way that a therapist or a healthcare provider could do that would mean that they would have to actually get off the couch and actually be aware of their local community and recognize their role from their particular location. What that means is if you are a Black therapist and you go into your own community to derive, to illuminate, to connect, to be a part, not to be the therapist going to that organization over there, but actually be in community with your people and recognize the importance of establishing those kinds of relationships so that you can offer support for those that you hold space for, or otherwise known as clients, can gain access not only to the referral source connected to XYZ institution or hospital, but also recognize who are the folks doing the grassroots work, who are the folks holding the healing spaces. We therapists should be referring folks to Huru, okay? Like that needs to be a part of the kinds of things that we're doing. The other thing is, I am a licensed clinical social worker trained as an integrated psychotherapist, and I recognize that if therapists are navigating these institutions and we're accepting insurance, we are in effect a part of the medical industrial complex. It is what it is. We need to be honest about that and all the atrocity associated with it. We have to recognize that yes, there is a use for things like the DSM, and there is also a use for our indigenous ways of healing. And so when we are talking about, and now if we're talking about Black folk, indigenous folk, and other folk of color, well, really, I'm just talking about Black folk. So if I'm talking about a Black therapist, right, then we need to be well-versed in not just the healing traditions of maybe Black theology, right? But also, what are the traditional African spiritual perspectives? What are the other spiritual traditions associated with those that are Muslim? What are the wide gamut of our healing ways? And how can we, even if we are not practicing in that particular way, how are we creating an illuminated and free space so that folks can actually bring their faith into the space and allow us to hold a protective space for that kind of reflection? Likewise, if we're talking about healing intergenerationally, you cannot do intergenerational healing work without calling in the ancestors, without an acknowledgement of the creation of the limitation of space and time. And so we should be honoring the interconnectedness of that 7 generations forward and back. And if we don't know how to do that, then we should know people in our community that do know how to do that, so that that the folks we're holding space for get a holistic sense of what it means to be connected. I'm not done, I'm almost done now, I promise. We need to seek to uproot what Baba Wakesa Mazimoyo in Atlanta calls injected oppression. That is what Dr. Bobby Wright talked about as menticide, which is really when we have endured and absorbed so much of what the expectations of white supremacy is in the European worldview that we can't remember ourselves. That should be a centermost aspect. How are we holding the space for folks to remember their selves, their people pre-colonial? And how are we holding space for imagining something in the future? Okay, I think I have one more. Two. Okay, and then the last.
Can you get it in 30 seconds or less?
Stop, don't do that, girl. You did that last time. Consider critical consciousness raising as central to trauma responsiveness. We can't be culturally aware, but we want to keep all of the activism and the radical sort of uprooting ideas of what it means to actually cultivate a liberation-focused identity if we can't stand to hold the complexity and the challenge of the war that is perpetually happening to us on the couch. And then last, we should be where therapists should be trained. And I mean, if you want to get trained, come on over to me. They're decolonizing therapy for Black folk, but we should be trained to work collaboratively to dismantle colonial foundations in mental health care. Instead of spending our time venting about all the things that are wrong, we should be organizing with the people in the community as a tool. And so I think I'm done. And so if we do all of those things, if the therapists do what they're supposed to do and they are communicating and aligning themselves with the healers and the elders and those priestesses, those original healing ways, those pastors and them, those of us that are activists and change makers, if we unplug from the system and actually cultivate a grassroots sense of self, you know, we be healed out here, okay? And then my 4-year-old, okay? And then her 4-year-old in the future, we're gonna have a whole nother way of existing.
We can't go back to your 4-year-old with the time, but I'm gonna sum it up. Decolonize therapy, decolonize training, decolonize wellness, decolonize research. Thank you, Anana. So this evening, we've elevated the need to center wellness in our movement work as we labor. During our previous conversations, you spoke about great laborers of love that we've lost. So now we would like to take a minute to give you the opportunity to uplift those names now. We also want to invite everyone here with us tonight to enter the name of a laborer of love in the chat that you want to honor, regardless of their current form, those physically with us or those with us in spirit.
Coming on the heels of Shawna laying the framework for this revolutionary shift that we all deserve, and then having you, Venus, really undergird it with the importance of acknowledgement of those who not only have labored, but are still delivering, right? They're still in labor. They still are experiencing the contractions of the pressures of the world, right? They're still delivering themselves as well as a bunch of other people. I wanted to uplift two in particular who are now new ancestors, and then one who's still living. One is Karen Mason. She recently transitioned on March 22nd. She, I'm a little choked up about the sisters who've passed. She just was a powerhouse. So Google her, Karen Marie Mason. And then Dr. Doris Derby, she passed on Monday. And she not only was a member of SNCC, she not only helped to establish an Office of African American Student Services at Georgia State, she not only did so many things, but she also ushered in so many other young people within the African diaspora to be where they are today. And so the last is my mother, right? My mother, Kathleen Asada Albert, went to Southern University with my father, and they were a part of the student revolts where the students were killed on Southern University's campus. She was a part of a martial arts group that protected the Black women students, walking them backwards and forwards to the different dorms. She also signed off on NAACP Legal Defense Fund paperwork to make sure that the activists had representation on Southern, and you all would never know, right, about some of those unspoken laborers that gave birth physically, but then also labored on our behalf. So I'm framing all that to say none of them, including my mother, and I'm really gonna keep it together, none of them attended an event like this. none of them had an option to do the things that every presenter here shared, right? The option to make suggestions to yourself, to protect time on your calendar, to be strategic, to call on spaces that you really do need. So these names that you all are typing, you are among them. You are among those names, and I would like to usher in a moment of silence so that we can really see that we are the revolutionaries that they prayed for and that they wanted to inject into the society that they weren't able to move in. We literally, by doing this work, are revolutionaries. And so please take a moment to not only honor those who we know by name and some we don't know by name, but honor those who also pray that you would make some excellent strategic wellness and self-care choices, not just to be loved by yourself, but to love each other. A moment of silence, please.
Thank you, Anana, for reminding us to uplift those names of the people who struggled on our behalf so that we could be here today, continually to do the work in healthier ways, sustaining ways, ways to thrive. We would like to thank everyone for your insightful responses and candid advice during this community discussion. Unfortunately, we aren't able to get to everyone's questions this evening, but we do look forward to continual discussions throughout the week on social media and at future AAPF events. Awoye.
Thank you so much, Venus. Well, once again, I want to thank this dream team of Black women healers, caregivers, and health practitioners. Thank you to AAPF's own Dr. Venus Evans-Winter, Shermena Nelson, and Gina Loring, and Shawna Murray-Browne, Dr. Leslie Woke, Anana Harris-Paris, Chloe Dulce Louvouezo, Isis Ray Goldborn, and Imani Samuels. Truly, from the depths of our hearts, thank you so much for your presence, your brilliance, your generosity of spirit, your incredible ability to shift paradigms, and your guidance as we navigated this conversation of self-care and ritual healing. A very special thank you to Gina Loring for the restorative poem that opened this space, and a preemptive thank you to Abby Dobson, who's gonna lead us out in song. And to all of you, thank you so, so much for joining us today. We hope that you leave this space feeling empowered and feeling loved. We are honored to be in community and to be building community with all of you. We hope that the incredible insights of these practitioners and the moments of care you all took in our breakout sessions will lead you with lifelong strategic tools for your own joy, rest, and restoration. We hope that you're able to take some of the themes we explored and channel our rich ancestral history of care. And thank you so much to all of our wonderful guests for outlining what those are and how we can stand really firmly inside of them. If you desire to be in community with us further, we welcome you to join us for our 2 final Her Dream Deferred events in our Mother's Garden, Restorative Storytelling and Intergenerational Healing. That's going to be on Friday at 4:30 p.m. and for our wellness activity, which will be on Saturday at 10 a.m. The amazing AAPF team has also compiled a list of resources featuring many of the practitioners and tools that we've uplifted today. And we really, really would love to hear from you. It's an incredibly special thing for us to be able to put this event together, and is nothing without all of you and your feedback and wisdom and insight as well. So we welcome you to fill out the questionnaire that we're going to place in the chat right now. And we're going to close out the night with a ritual meditation led by Imani Samuels. And that's going to be immediately followed by a musical selection by AAPF's artist in residence, Abby Dobson. And as Abby brings her incredible musical talents and gifts. We invite you to share any feedback you might have. So thank you so much. And Imani, I pass it to you.
Awoye. I invite you to close your eyes or soften your gaze and think of a person who loves you very much. Imagine that person is standing in front of you, sending you wishes for your wellness, for your freedom, and for your joy. And repeat the following phrases silently. Love is when I breathe life into you. My exhale is your inhale. Love sustains life. It is the very heartbeat of humanity. Love is the firstborn of God and Mother Earth. Deeply planted and gracefully sown. It smells ripe and it tastes sweet. You are love, as am I. Amen and Ashe.
Special someone, treasure to find. I am holy, a gift to this world. I am worthy of all my dreams. The world can test me, my spirit won't die. Try to hurt me, but I will survive. Some try to break me, but I'm still alive. And I'm worthy of all my dreams. I will fight for what I believe. I am not alone, and you can count on me. I'm my sister's keeper. I know her pain. No matter the cost, I'll say her name. I'm my sister's keeper. I know her pain. No matter the cost, I'll say her name. Mm.